Hamsters on the loose, who knew? That's it from me and the team on The World Today. The Context is coming up with my colleague Annita McVeigh. Stay with us on BBC News. Hello, I'm Annita McVeigh. You're watching The Context on BBC News.
Donald Trump's defence team had been attempting to have this case thrown out. That isn't what has happened, but instead this sentencing may now not happen until after Donald Trump's presidency. Questions as to whether it will actually happen at all.
Now, both sides have got to submit their arguments to the judge by early December, and he'll then make a decision. But even before that, Donald Trump's spokesperson is calling this a decisive win for the president-elect.
If this is in fact a nation of laws and a jury of his peers found him guilty, there needs to be some accountability, or that entire experiment, I think, comes into question.
The judge in Donald Trump's criminal hush money case orders that sentencing be delayed indefinitely following Mr. Trump's re-election to the White House. We'll have the latest analysis. Also on the programme, Donald Trump nominates veteran prosecutor Pam Bondi as his new Attorney General after Matt Gaetz withdraws his nomination for the role. An Australian teenager becomes the sixth person to die in suspected methanol poisoning in Laos. And Russian President Vladimir Putin says that Russia will continue to use ballistic missiles a day after firing one into Ukraine. President Zelensky is now calling for new air defense systems. The judge in Donald Trump's criminal hush money case has ordered that sentencing be delayed indefinitely. That follows Mr. Trump's re-election to the White House. The president-elect had been scheduled to be sentenced next Tuesday, but that's now been suspended. Lawyers for Mr. Trump have argued that his conviction should be dismissed on the grounds of presidential immunity, saying it would interfere with his ability to govern. OK, good to talk to you, Joe. Thank you very much for your time today. Joe Moreno. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. A sixth tourist has died in a suspected mass methanol poisoning in Laos. The Australian government said 19-year-old backpacker Holly Bowles from Melbourne died in a hospital in Thailand a day after the death of her best friend, Bianca Jones. The girls played in a football team together in Australia. In a statement, Holly's family said, "We are so sad to say that our beautiful girl Holly is now at peace. We find comfort and solace in knowing that Holly brought so much joy and happiness." OK, Professor Sergei Radchenko, thank you very much for your time from the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies.
Thank you for having me.
And do stay with us here on The Context on BBC News. Much more discussion to come. Hello, I'm Annita McVeigh and you're watching The Context on BBC News. As the UN Climate Summit comes to a close and pressure mounts on developed countries to do more, we look at what Donald Trump's approach to climate policy might be. Before that sport, let's head to the BBC Sports Centre for a full roundup from Jane Dougal. Hi, Jane.
Hi there, Annita. We start with football because new Manchester United head coach Ruben Amorim has told a packed news conference that he believes in the players at the club. It is the first time that the Portuguese coach has spoken to the British media since he took over at Old Trafford. United sacked Erik ten Hag last month, with the club lying 13th in the table and without a Premier League title in more than a decade. However, former Sporting manager Amorim believes he is the man to turn things around. And that's all the sport for now, Annita.
Jane, thank you very much. The United Nations' latest climate summit is coming to a close in Azerbaijan, and there have been calls for countries to take further action to reduce emissions. Crucial to any global response is America, the world's only superpower and the world's second largest emitter. Donald Trump is about to become its president, and he has been fiercely critical of Joe Biden's approach to climate change. Our analysis editor, Roz Atkins, has been looking at what Donald Trump may do instead. I should say a very positive climate story coming up in just a minute around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News. Scientists in Japan say they've developed a plastic that can fully break down in seawater. Writing in the journal Science, the researchers say the new plastic is just as strong as current plastics and is processed in a similar way. The material can be broken down by bacteria, leaving no microplastics behind. Scientists have long been trying to stop the huge plastic buildup in the world's oceans.
This cut-off point, people who are amongst the poorest, that cut-off point is just too soon, happening too soon, too quickly. So I think it's going to be under pressure, not just from the listeners of BBC Local Radio, but from some people inside his own party to try to make changes.
Ian, we're out of time. Thank you very much, Ian Watson. Stay with us here on The Context. Hello, I'm Annita McVeigh and you're watching The Context on BBC News.
Putin also claimed again that this missile is invincible and that the Western forces do not have any ways and means to intercept it.
I believe that he launched this a kind of game who's gonna blink the first one. So he wants to outweigh, to outman and to outgun and to scare the West.
There is a lot of rhetoric here. Russia has escalated its nuclear threat. It has always done that when Putin felt that he was or has been feeling that he is under threat.
I think Russia has now supplied North Korea with, as you say, over 1 million barrels of oil, which is in violation of UN sanctions.
And joining me tonight are Leon Emirali, who was an aide to the former UK Environment Secretary Steve Barclay, and also Democratic strategist Kurt Bardella. First, the latest headlines for you. And the judge in Donald Trump's criminal hush money case has ordered that sentencing be delayed indefinitely following Mr. Trump's re-election. He was due to be sentenced next Tuesday. Mr. Trump's lawyers argued the case would cause unconstitutional impediments to his ability to govern. The rapper and music producer Sean Diddy Combs is appearing in court in New York to make a new request for bail. He's awaiting trial on sex trafficking and racketeering charges, which he denies. Combs has been detained at a New York jail for more than 2 months. A woman who accused the Irish mixed martial arts fighter Conor McGregor of raping her in a Dublin hotel 6 years ago has won her claim against him for damages in a High Court civil case. The MMA fighter has been ordered to pay Nikita Hand €250,000 in damages. Lava continues to flow from a volcano on Iceland's Reykjanes Peninsula. It's erupting for the 7th time in less than a year. Prior to 2021, the area hadn't seen volcanic activity in 800 years. Seismologists say a long dormant fault line lying under the landscape has reawakened. We begin this hour in Europe and a renewed warning of a very real and serious risk of global conflict developing from Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. That warning came on Friday from one of Kyiv's top allies, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. The conflict, he added, was entering a decisive stage. Moscow's strike on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, which involved a new experimental ballistic missile with multiple warheads, has been widely condemned. Kurt and Leon, more from you in just a moment. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Now, the judge in Donald Trump's criminal hush money case has ordered that sentencing be delayed indefinitely. That's following Mr. Trump's re-election to the White House. In May, the president-elect was found guilty of falsifying business records to cover up an alleged sexual encounter with an adult film star. Mr. Trump had been scheduled to be sentenced next Tuesday. That's now been suspended. Lawyers for the president-elect say the conviction would interfere with his ability to govern. They argue it should be dismissed entirely. Meanwhile, we're getting new details on the president-elect's cabinet. Mr. Trump has nominated veteran prosecutor Pam Bondi as his new Attorney General. She's a longtime ally of Mr. Trump who defended him during his first Senate impeachment trial. Kurt and Leon will be talking some more in just a moment. Right now, a short break. Stay with us here on The Context on BBC News. Hello, I'm Annita McVeigh and you're watching The Context on BBC News. The UN Climate Summit in Baku is set to overrun into the weekend as countries fail to agree on key issues. So after 2 weeks in Baku in Azerbaijan, talks at the COP29 climate summit are coming to a sort of a close, almost a close. The summit is set to overrun its initial schedule, as is typical for these COP summits in the Azerbaijani capital. There are deep divisions over key issues, improving efforts to cut carbon and dealing with climate finance. On this, a vital question looms: how much money is needed to help vulnerable countries and who should fork out for it? Okay, unanimity from you both on that one. We'll be talking about things that have caught your attention, Kurt and Leon, in just a minute, but right now around the world and across the UK. This is The Context on BBC News. And now it's time for the panel. Still with us on The Context, our panel, Leon Emirali, entrepreneur and former aide to the UK's former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and Democratic strategist Kurt Bardella. Kurt, let's begin with you on this one. And the Country Music Awards, I think the 58th Country Music Awards, if I'm correct, which you attended. Yeah. I mean, country music's having a moment, isn't it? It's always had a moment, but it's got Beyonce on board now as well. So tell us about the awards. What were the highlights for you?
Jaguar they know and love has now gone and been admonished to history.
Kurt, I think you want to say something. 5 seconds?
It's like a Mad Men episode gone horribly wrong.
Okay, well, the idea that no publicity is bad publicity is perhaps not the right adage in this instance. Leon and Kurt, thank you so much.
Hello from the BBC Sports Centre, I'm Jane Dougal. He has said it's a big task and he doesn't know how long it'll take, but Ruben Amorim believes he can turn Manchester United's fortunes around. The Portuguese coach was speaking to the media for the first time since taking over at Old Trafford. United sacked Erik ten Hag last month, with the club 13th in the table. Former Sporting manager Amorim told a packed news conference that he has faith and that he's a good fit for the theatre of dreams. Well, that's all the sport for now, but there's more details on the BBC Sport website. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.
Hello there, good evening. Well, it's all changed weather-wise this weekend to something milder